Sociology, Unit 9 and 10, basic concepts. In Unit 9, we are going to study organizations and institutions. In Unit 10, we are going to study status and role. Unit 9, organizations and institutions. Yeah. This unit explores institutions and organizations as fundamental units of society. It examines the relationship between society, institutions, and organizations, focusing on their roles in maintaining order and stability. The concepts of institutions and organizations are unpacked along with their impact on human behavior and society. Various sociological perspectives on these entities are also discussed. Society and its structure. Society is composed of individuals. You see, like housing society, uh, resident, you see, welfare, you see, society, and collective groups structured by relationships between them to maintain order and predictability. Society organizes itself through institutions and organizations. These entities provide the stability necessary for societal coherence. Institutions and organizations. Institutions are defined as set of rules or guidelines that structure social interactions. Jack Knight, 1992. They influence human activity by establishing expectations for behavior, often through both explicit and implied rules. Common institutions include law, education, marriage, and family. Organizations are a specific type of institution with clearly defined boundaries separating members from non-members. They are characterized by hierarchical structures, chains of command, and distinct roles. Examples include trade unions, you see, schools, and courts. Definition of institutions. Institutions are social structures that help maintain order and stability by regulating human interactions. Sociologists regard institutions as critical components of society. They manifest through norms and behaviors that members of a society are socialized into, shaping collective and individual actions. Scholarly definitions. Morris Ginsburg in 1922 said institutions are, you see, definite and sanctioned forms or modes of relationship between social beings. Robert Morrison McCure said institutions are established forms or conditions of procedures characteristic of, you see, group activity. William Graham Summer in 1906 said institutions consist of a concept, idea, nation, doctrine, or interest combined with a structure. Then next is, you see, Bronislaw Malinowski said institutions unite people around a fundamental need and have distinct doctrines and techniques. Key characteristics of institutions. Non-physical, you see, entities. Institutions are not always physical but can be seen through consistent patterns of behavior. Behavioral influence. Institutions guide and explain individual and group behavior within a society. Enabling and restrictive. They provide guidelines for actions while also limiting choices, ensuring stability. Normative expectations. Institutions get generalized, you see, obligatory social expectations supplemented by sanctions against deviations. Dynamic processes. Institutions are not static. You see, they are not static, but involve processes like institutionalization, deinstitutionalization, and reinstitutionalization. You see, this was said by Giddens in 1984. Origin of the term, the concept of, you see, institutions originated in economics, where it referred to constraints on individual efforts due to competing interests. Key economists such as Oliver Williamson and D.C. North are associated with this usage. Sociologists like Herbert Spencer later adopted the term, applying it to social structures. Purpose of institutions. German sociologist Arnold Gehlen in 1980 suggested that humans create institutions to compensate for their biological limitations. Thomas Luckman in 1967 said, you see, he further elaborated that institutions connect individuals to their natural environment through social relationships and cultural constructs. Types of institutions: economic institutions concerned with, you see, production, consumption, and distribution of goods and services. Institutions of social stratification regulate access to social status and prestige. Kinship, marriage and family, control reproduction and familiar roles. Political institutions concerned with the regulation and distribution of power. Cultural institutions regulate religious, symbolic, and cultural practices. Perspectives on social institutions. Social institutions fulfill fundamental social needs and provide insights into societal structures. Different sociological perspectives offer varied interpretations of how institutions function and impact society. Types of perspectives: functional perspective, conflict perspective, interactionalist, perspective. The functional perspective views institutions as essential components that ensure societal stability. Institutions fulfill societal needs like replacement of personnel. Societies lose members due to aging, disease, and migration. Institutions facilitate adding new members through immigration or reproduction. Next is socialization and education. Institutions like schools socialize new members by educating them about societal norms and values. Production and distribution. Economic institutions handle the production, circulation, and distribution of goods and services. Maintenance of order. Political institutions provide governance and defend against threats. Promoting belonging. Institutions foster allegiance to cultural, religious, and social groups. Conflict perspective. The conflict perspective agrees that institutions meet basic societal needs but argues that they also perpetuate inequalities. Institutions maintain power hierarchies and benefit privileged groups at the expense of marginalized communities. For example, the institution of education often privileges certain social classes, and the institution of family can exploit women's labor. This perspective highlights how institutions reinforce, oppression based on race, gender, and class. Interactionist perspective. The interactionist perspective focuses on the micro level interactions shaped by institutions. It examines how roles and statutes within institutions influence everyday behaviors. For instance, the role of a teacher in an educational institution is defined by interactions with students, parents, and other stakeholders. These roles and statutes guide individuals' behavior in daily life, reflecting the institution's broader significance. Organization, institutions, and organizations, though related, differ in structure and function. Institutions represent normative expectations that guide interactions within society without being explicitly stated. In contrast, organizations are formal entities with clearly defined boundaries, distinguishing members from non-members. Institutions can be seen as the unwritten rules, like those governing how football is played, while organizations are the formal structures that manage and enforce these rules. Other examples of organizations include Indian Postal Services, Indian Coffee House, Kendriya Vidyalaya, Delhi Police, and Khadi Gram Udyog. Key features of organizations: all organizations, regardless of their size or goals, work towards facilitating large scale operations. They have clearly stated objectives, a defined hierarchy of authority, and an established chain of command. Organizations have decision making powers and are capable of taking action as described by Coleman in 1982 and Indes in 1989. In modern industrial and post-industrial societies, organizations have grown larger and more complex, reflecting the increasing specialization of labor. Perspectives on organizations. There are several theoretical perspectives on the nature and functioning of organizations, which help in understanding their structure, goals, and methods. Amitai Gioni, Max Weber, Erving Goffman. Amitai Gioni defines organizations as social units that are predominantly oriented to the attainment of specific goals. Gioni et al., he said it in 1980. According to Gioni, organizations have three key characteristics: division of labor, power, responsibilities. These divisions are deliberately structured to achieve the organization's goals. Power centers, these control productivity, monitor efficiency, and reorganize the structure when necessary. Substitution of personnel. Organizations maintain a healthy participant pool, allowing for the transfer of or promotion of individuals. Johnny said it in 1964. Now, classification of organizations by power relationship. Johnny classifies organizations based on the power relationship between administrators, and participants. Compliance-based: participants comply with the demands due to fear of sanctions or coercion. Utilitarian, consideration: participants comply because they receive valuable returns. Shared values: participants and administrators share similar norms, values, and assumptions. Types of power and participation. Etzioni identifies three types of power: coercive power based on fear and force, remunerative power based on providing returns, salary, normative power based on shared norms and values. Max Weber. Etzioni's work draws heavily on Max Weber's model of bureaucracy. Weber described bureaucratic administration as the most efficient way to organize human resources to achieve desired ends. He argued that bureaucracies were superior in precision, stability, discipline, and reliability. He said it in 1964. Characteristics of bureaucratic organizations. Weber highlighted several key features of bureaucracy: hierarchical structure, a clear arrangement of offices, each with defined authority, written rules and procedures. All operations are governed by clearly written rules. Impersonal authority. Commands are issued based on the office, not the individual. Record keeping. Bureaucracies maintain written records of all operations. Technical qualifications. Employees are hired based on technical qualifications. Uh, Separation of personal and official affairs. A clear distinction between personal and business matters. Goffman introduced the concept of total institutions, which differ from typical organizations. Examples include hospitals, monasteries, prisons, and boarding schools, where participants live within the organization. These institutions combine work, leisure, and home life under a single authority. Characteristics of total institutions: enclosed structure. Participants live in contained spaces with all aspects of life controlled by the institution. Institutional careers. Participants follow prescribed paths of behavior that reinforce their roles. Shared experience. Inmates or participants share similar experiences and often develop a collective antagonism toward the staff. Goffman noted that even though participants in total institutions yearn for release, they often miss the institution once they leave due to the structure and routine it provides. Classification of organizations. Goffman and Adjoni's classification. Goffman distinguished between work organizations and treatment organizations based on their function. Adjoni classified organizations based on power relationships between participants and administrators as outlined earlier. Blau and Scott's classification. Blau and Scott in 1963 proposed a classification based on the prime beneficiary of the organization. Mutual benefit, the organization benefits all its members. Business, the prime beneficiary is the owner or management. Service, the prime beneficiaries are the clients or the public. Common weal, the organization serves the large population. Organization behavior, the interaction between individuals and organizations influence both the organization's character and the individual's personality. Attitudes of members towards the organization, roles that members are assigned, duties. Attitudes of members towards the organization, the attitudes of participants and administrators are crucial to the functioning of an organization. For example, the administrators of a sanatorium are responsible for controlling participants, often against their will, to ensure the facility runs smoothly. In contrast, a monastery, while similar in structure, differs because participants voluntarily comply with its rules due to shared beliefs. Role that members are assigned, duties that members are assigned. Individuals acquire specific roles upon entering an organization, which comes with role expectations. These roles shape interpersonal relationships and influence the overall functioning of the organization. For example, in a prison, the antagonism between inmates and guards is shaped by their roles, making personal relationships unlikely. Roles within organizations also impact individuals' behavior outside the organization. This concept was illustrated in Charlie Chaplin's movie Modern Times in 1936, where a factory worker accustomed to repetitive wrist movements continues this motion involuntarily in his daily life. Now we come on now we give a quick revision of what we have studied in unit 9. In unit 9, we have studied institutions. Institution is, a customs, practice, relationship, or behavioral pattern of importance in the life of a community or society. The institution of, marriage and the family, consistent and organized patterns of behavior or activities established by law or custom that are self-regulating in accordance with generally accepted norms. For example, political institutions are involved with and regulate regulate competition for power, and economic institutions such as markets encourage and regulate production and distribution of goods and services. Then we studied, origin of the term. To economics, the institutions in the sociological sense can help predict and explain individual behaviors. Then we studied purpose of institution. Institutions developed out of certain human needs or interests. Then we have studied, types of institutions. According to sociologists, institutions are classified into 5 clusters of major institutions. They are economic institutions for organizing of services of utility like bank, labor, union, commercial and industrial enterprise that correspond to production, consumption and distribution of goods and services. Institutions of social stratification are the institutions that regulate and control differential, access to social status and practice. Then kinship, marriage and family institutions control and regulate, reproduction. Then political institutions are concerned with, regulation and distribution of power. Cultural institutions for transmitting social heritage like family, school, church. Then next we studied, perspectives on social institutions. Sociologists analyze, social phenomena at different levels and from different, perspectives. From concrete interpretations to striking, generalizations of society and social behavior. Sociologists study everything from specific events, the micro level of analysis of small social patterns, to the big picture, the macro level of analysis of, large social patterns. Functionalist perspective, according to the functionalist perspective, also called functionalism, each aspect of society is interdependent and contributes to society's functioning as a whole. Then we studied, conflict perspective. The conflict perspective, which originated primarily out of Karl Marx writing on class struggles, presents society in a different, light than do the functionalist and symbolic interactionist perspectives. While these later perspectives focus on the positive aspects of society that contribute to its, stability, the conflict perspective focuses on the negative, conflicted and ever-changing nature of society. Then we studied interactionist perspective. The interactionist perspective is interested in the microcosmic view of how institutions play out in actual interactions. Then we studied, organization, a social unit of people that is structured and manage to meet a need or to pursue collective goals. Then we studied, you see, perspective of, you see, organizations, different, you see, people, you see, explained this. Amitai Etzioni et al. In 1980 defines organizations as social units that are predominantly oriented to the attainment of specific goals, specific purpose. Then next, you see, was defined by Max Weber. At the end of 19th century, it was German sociologist and author of the Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. In 1905, Max Weber, who was the first to use and describe the term bureaucracy. This is also known as the bureaucratic theory of management, bureaucratic management theory, or the Max Weber theory. Then next, it was defined by Erving Goffman, a class of organizations that are different from each other in some respects, yet share a common distinct feature, was highlighted by Erwin Goffman. Then next, we studied classification of organizations: business organizations, government organizations, protective organizations, service organizations. Then political organizations, religious organizations, associative organizations, and educational, you see, organizations. Then we studied organizational behavior. Organizational behavior can be defined as the understanding, prediction, and management of human behavior, both individually or in a group, that occur within an organization. Then we studied attitudes of members towards the organization. Organizations are increasingly interested in retaining right talents while targeting for new talents. Measuring employees' attitude provides an indication of how successful the organization is in fostering a conducive environment which nurtures great attitude among employees towards their job and company. Then we studied, you see, role that members are, you see, assigned. In this, we have studied, you see, individuals acquire specific roles upon entering an organization, which comes with role expectations. These roles shape interpersonal relationships and influence the overall functioning of the organization. For example, in a prison, the antagonism between inmates and guards is shaped by their roles, making personal relationships unlikely. You see, guard and prisoners. You see. Roles with organizations also impact individuals' behavior outside the organization. The concept was illustrated in Charlie Chaplin's movie Modern Times in 1966. The movie is in 1966, where a factory worker accustomed to repetitive wrist movements, you see, continues this motion involuntarily in his daily life also. Now we go to the next chapter, that is Unit 10, Status and Roles. This unit introduces the concept of status and roles, two important components of social structure. It explores the dynamics of roles in both simple and complex societies, focusing on key dimensions such as role sets, multiple roles, role signs, and role conflict. Though status and role are discussed separately, their relationship is, you see, interwoven throughout. Now, definition of status. Status refers to the position an individual holds within a society. That is a status. Throughout life, individuals occupy various statuses based on factors like age, gender, you see, class, occupation, and education. For example, one can simultaneously be a daughter, social worker, guitarist, and company manager. The collective set of all statuses held by an individual is called their status set. According to Ralph Linton in 1936, status is a collection of rights and duties. Each status has specific expectations attached to it, referred to as social roles. Linton emphasizes the relationship between status and role. Status represents a position, while roles represent the dynamic behavior expected from that position. In simple words, statuses are occupied and roles are played. Status and social hierarchy. While the term status refers to social positions such as man or woman, lawyer or shopkeeper, Brahmin or Dalit, in everyday usage we often associate status with the nations of high and low. These perceptions are influenced by factors like where we live, our profession, who we associate with, and the schools or institutions we attend. Status is a basis for social stratification where positions are not just differentiated but also ranked. For instance, different occupations are not only part of the division of labor but are also ranked in terms of prestige and are rewarded differently. Max Weber's definition of status. Sociologist Max Weber defined status as the positive or negative social estimation of honor and related it to lifestyle. Lifestyles in turn are symbolized by material possessions like housing, clothing, language, and occupation. Therefore, having a luxury car or living in a wealthy neighborhood can be seen as a marker of high status. Although wealth often determines status, Weber argued that class and status do not always overlap. Status can be an independent basis for social stratification, meaning that both wealthy and non-wealthy individuals can belong to the same status group. Privileges and disadvantages of status. Each status is associated with specific privileges or disadvantages. For instance, in India, a person of Dalit status was historically denied access to public wealth, and in the US, being black was once a basis for discrimination in employment and education. Our status and its associated roles are not static. Over time, struggles for rights have reshaped these perceptions. For example, being a woman or belonging to a historically marginalized group is now seen more positively in many societies. Types of status. You see, Linton in 1936 distinguished between two main types of status: ascribed status, achieved status. Ascribed status are those assigned at birth or without reference to individual abilities. Common ascribed status include age, sex, race, and kinship. In many societies, birth into a particular class or caste also determines ascribed status. Achieved status, on the other hand, are earned or acquired over time through competition and effort. Occupation and education are examples of achieved status, as is marriage. However, the distinction between ascribed and achieved status is not always clear cut. For example, although sex is often considered an ascribed status, people can undergo gender transitions later in life. Likewise, although class is often thought of as achieved, one's ascribed status such as race or gender can influence one's ability to achieve certain statuses. Master status. In every society, one status often overshadows others and becomes the most important in how others perceive the individual. This is known as master status. Characteristics like gender, race, or caste often serve as master statuses in highly stratified, you see, societies. A person's master status can shape their life opportunities, including education, employment, and social networks. Definition of role. A role refers to the behaviors and expectations associated with a particular status. For example, the role of a traffic police officer is to manage traffic, while a restaurant waitress is expected to take orders and serve food. Roles help maintain social order and predictability in interactions. According to Turner 2006, roles are clusters of behaviors and attitudes that organize social behavior at both the individual and collective levels. Roles are essential in structuring cooperation in society, as noted by Benton in 1965. Expected and actual, you see, behavior. Sociologist Newcomb distinguishes between expected and actual behaviors. Expected behavior refers to how individuals are supposed to act according to their status and role, while actual behavior may differ. Benton in 1965 further refined this by noting that actual behavior can be influenced by role cognitions and individuals' personal ideas of appropriate behavior, expectations, what others expect the individual to do, norms, societal standards of what the individual should do. Role learning begins at a young age when children observe how others behave in different roles. Children often engage in role-playing games where they enact roles like teacher or parent. Individuals also have role models whose behavior they may incorporate into their own. Switching and, you see, compartmenting roles. Individuals frequently switch between multiple roles. For example, a woman may play the role of a daughter at home, a friend at a social gathering, and a manager at work. Social situations also define how roles are played. Behavior in a formal work setting is often different from behavior at home. Although people are expected to conform to social expectations, many constantly negotiate and redefine the roles they play. Traditional roles are challenged, such as in the case of women in India, who are now taking up roles historically reserved for men. Role theory. There are two primary, you see, approaches to understand roles: structural, and interactionist approaches. Structural approach. The structuralist, including Linton, Benton, Parsons, and Merton, view roles as norms and expectations associated with status in the social structure. Individuals are socialized into role taking, meaning they adopt the behaviors expected of their status. Interactionist approach, in contrast, interactionists like, you see, Med and Turner argue that individuals interpret and evaluate their roles, engaging in a creative process of role making. While bound by social structures, individuals have some freedom to negotiate the roles they perform, making role playing an active rather than, you see, passive process. Classification of roles: ascribed and achieved roles. Ascribed roles, these are, you see, roles given at birth, such as those related to sex, gender, age, kinship, caste, or class. Achieved roles, these are acquired based on merit throughout life, such as occupational roles like farmer, salesperson, lawyer, doctor, or professor. relation, relational and non-relational roles. Relational roles, these roles depend on relationships with others, like the role of a wife, which is linked to a which requires a credit. Non-relational roles are independent, such as musician or researcher, and do not rely on others' roles. Classification of roles: basic, general, and independent roles. They were defined by Benton in 1965. Basic roles determined by sex and age, shaping conduct in various social contests. That is, a child's role based on age and gender. General roles assigned based on merit, often involving occupational or societal roles. Independent roles, roles with minimal impact on other roles, such as leisure activities like being a golfer. Role systems in simple and complex societies. Roles in simple societies: sex-based roles. Men hunt while women manage the household. Age-based roles: boys enter adulthood by hunting, while girls mature into roles based on physical changes. Kinship-based roles: parents raise children, and mutual obligations develop between them as adults. Role systems in simple and complex societies, roles in complex societies. Social strata: roles are assigned based on social ranks like nobles or commoners. Task specialization: in modern societies, tasks are divided by specialization, such as in a bakery where different workers manage specific duties. Dimensions of roles: multiple roles and role set. It was defined by Merton in 1957. The role set: each status has a set of associated roles. For example, a medical student interacts with doctors, nurses, and social workers. Multiple roles refers to various roles related to an individual's different statuses, like being both a parent and a professional. Dimensions of roles: role signs. Basic role signs include names, clothing, and titles like Mr. or Mrs., which indicate gender or marital status. General role signs include uniforms or badges that distinguish roles like police officer or doctor. Independent role signs: these have limited relevance, such as signs for leisure roles like a golfer's attire in a golf club. Role changes: ceremonies marking role changes, important like transitions, like becoming an adult, marrying, or assuming a leadership role, are marked by ceremonies, that is weddings, oath taking. Adopting to new roles: as roles evolve, individuals and those around them must adjust their expectations and behaviors. Role conflict and strain: role conflict occurs when two different roles demand conflicting expectations, such as a class monitor expected to report to see friends' misbehavior. Role strain happens when conflicting demands arise within a single role, such as a student juggling academic and extracurricular responsibilities. Managing role conflict: people often separate their roles. Role compartmentalization to avoid conflict or prioritize one role over another. So we have studied in this chapter. We will just give a quick revision. We have studied in this chapter, status and role. The concept of status we see in every society and every group. Each member has some function or activity with which he is associated and which carries with it some degree of power or prestige. What the individual does or performs, we generally call this as his role. The degree of prestige or power we refer to as his status. Roles are related with the status. By status, Linton meant a position in a social system involving designated rights and obligation, whereas by role he meant the behavior oriented to the patterned easy expectations of others. Then we studied ascribed and achieved status. Status which are given to us at birth, age, sex, kinship, race, caste are known as ascribed status. These are assigned to a person by society without regard for the person's unique talent or characteristics. Such ascribed characteristics cannot be changed by individual's effort. These are more or less determined by the cultural situation over which he has no control initially. For example, position or status of a boy or a girl in a family is ascribed in terms both of sex and age. Likewise, Negro or Harijan are ascribed status, any social position held by an individual as a result of his or her personal accomplishments in open format or market competition with others is known as achieved status. It is a social position which a person attains through his own efforts, individual choice and competition. This is achieved, this is status. He has achieved this. Next is master status. Each person holds many different statuses. Some may connote higher social positions and some lower positions. Then we studied the concept of role. Every person plays different roles attached to their status. There are roles associated with each one of them. A woman, for instance, plays the role of a daughter, sister, student, a private tutor, a friend, and so on. Then we have studied role cognitions, expectations, norms. Role cognitions, it is the individual's own ideas of what is appropriate or expectations to other people's ideas about what he will do, or norms to other people's ideas about what he should do. The next is role theory. Role theory began with a set of normative expectations that are presumed to define particular positions or status in social structure and their corresponding roles or behaviors in interacting with others. Then classification of roles we studied ascribed role and achieved roles, relational and non-relational roles, basic, general and independent roles. Now ascribed roles and achieved roles. The ascribed roles are the ones that are given at birth. From the time an individual is born, role learning begins, which is a part of what we know as socialization. These roles pertain to one's sex, age, kinship, caste, class, and so on. The achieved roles, on the other hand, are the ones that are largely acquired over a lifetime on the basis of merit, such as occupational roles of a farmer, salesperson, banker, shopkeeper, driver, lawyer, professor, etc. Next, we have studied rational and irrational, non-rational roles. The roles divided into rational and non-rational. When a role performance is dependent or complementary role, it is rational. While Non-relational is relational. You see, data those you see non-relational roles, a poet, scholar. Thus, Nadel's classification is based on the kind of you see conduct expected of role. Then we studied you see basic, general, and independent roles. Basic roles are you see mostly determined by sex and age ascribed to individual at birth, and these roles shape conduct in a larger number of you see social contexts. The roles, general roles are you see mostly assigned on the basis of merit of the individual. Independent roles are you see determined by merit and have very less implications for other roles and on the way people respond to the person who occupies the independent you see role. Then we have studied you see role systems, simple and complex. Then you see from the socio-cultural point of view, all the roles are not equally important. Some of the roles are more important while the others are less. Modern societies are characterized by achievements. Its members are accorded prestige on the basis of their achievement. In traditional societies, your status and role was defined and ascribed at birth. Even in modern, even in you see modern achievement-based societies, ascribed status and role matters. In simple economic structures, this differentiation is reflected in terms of age, sex, and physical power. Besides, in some societies, differentiation rests on political and economic grounds, but in modern industrial societies, stratification is almost complex. It is derived from variable, you see, complementary criteria. Then roles in simple societies differ from those in complex societies. The Bushman and Kalahari Desert, a simple society has roles based on sex, age, and kinship and form a rigid, you see, role system. Roles in the complex societies, various other criteria for role allocation are important. Social strata are one criteria, and caste system illustrate this. In industrial societies, there is a great deal of specialization, diversification, with corresponding specialized and complex roles coming up. Now, dimensions of role, multiple roles, and you see role. It is important to note that one person can occupy many more than one role. For example, in the field of kinship, one holds many roles. At the same time, in our society, we find that people have several roles in other areas of social life than kinship, such as other than being a son or daughter, brother or sister, husband or wife, father or mother, etc. You are a college student, the citizen of your nation, member of some sporting club, playing of many roles by an individual is termed as multiple roles. Say, for example, a woman at home, she is mother. She is, at work. Suppose she is in a bank. She is a banker. She is working in a bank. A role set on the other hand is a cluster of two or more roles. There are reciprocal that are tied together in such a way that they must be enacted in interaction with one another, such as your role is as a student is reciprocal to teacher, librarian, fellow students, and principal and PM of your college. Roles in a role set are reciprocal in that the rights of one role are the obligations of the other or others. A teacher has the right to examine students, and students have the obligations to be examined. Now next is role science, distincting of what kind of clothes are we wearing works as a sign to differentiate the male and female roles. and helps others to anticipate, their roles and shape their response accordingly. It often serves as one of the most important ways to distinguish between men and women in almost all societies. Their dress, their uniform, their clothes are different, but it is important to ask why we must make this distinction. According to Benton role, signs help in communication and control, and they act as ways of communication by shaping all relationship expectations and interactions. Role signs help in controlling behavior and checking deviation from the role of the individual, from playing the role and signing others as well. The distinguishing signs are very important in everyday life, because without these the life will become very confusing. Benton identified signs of various roles in terms of basic, general and independent roles. Next is role changing. Role changing is an important aspect of life. Roles of individuals keep on uh, changing. When a person moves from one role to another, it is important to become familiar with the rights and obligations of this new role. This is important not only for the person who undergoes role change, but also for all others who are associated with the person to modify their behavior and expectations as per the new role. This is the reason why role changes are often marked by ceremonies. That changes might be according to their age as they enter the adulthood. Many societies celebrate it with some ceremonies. Same way, when two individuals become husband and wife, it is followed by a ceremony where family, friends, neighbors, and the community takes part. Similarly, when any person acquires an important position, like of a chairperson of an organization or prime minister or president of a country, it is marked by oath-taking ceremony. Now, next is role conflict, and strain. Role conflict happens, when there are contradictions between different roles that a person takes on or plays in their everyday life. In some cases, the conflict is the result of opposing obligations, which results in a conflict of interest. In others, when a person has roles that have different status, and it also occurs when people disagree about what the responsibilities for a particular role should be, whether in the personal or professional realms. Role conflict can occur, for example, when a parent coaches a basketball team that includes that parent's son. The role of the parent can conflict with the role of the coach, who needs to be objective when determining the position and batting lineup. When the role have different statuses, the result is called status strain. So we have seen role conflict and strain. Role conflict occurs when two different roles demand conflicting expectations, such as a class monitor expected to report friend's misbehavior. He is forced to report. Though the other student maybe is fast friend, but if he has misbehaved, he will report to the teacher. Next is role strain. Happens when conflicting demands arise within a single role, such as a student juggling academic and extracurricular responsibilities. Managing role conflict, people often separate their role compartmentalization to avoid conflict, or prioritize one role over another. So we are closing this session. Thank you very much, students. Thank you.